Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial art channel. Another episode of Kung Fu Debunk, where we debunk common misconceptions, misinformation, lies, and fallacies that regarding Chinese traditional martial art. In today's episode, just like all the previous ones, we're going to open another can of worms. So be prepared, possible drama incoming. Today we're going to talk about the fallacy of Fajin. Right, well, this is like a big touchy topic among a lot of traditional people, especially the internal crowd. Because Fajin, for some reason, in the West, become like a holy word, and it's kind of just like religion. It's very bipolar, right? The one end you have people who take it as a holy grail, and you have people who totally hate it. And as always, the truth is somewhere in the middle. So firstly, I'd like to clarify that Fajin is not a thing in Chinese culture. What that means is, like, it doesn't have any special meaning, right? So in the West, it's almost like Fajin refers to something very specific. But if you go to a Chinese martial community in China and you say Fajin, not that they don't understand it, they'll most likely know what you're saying, but it doesn't hold any magical property. When we're talking about power generation in Chinese martial community in China, we use a variety of different descriptions, and Fajin is actually one of the least popular. The one we use more is actually Fallacy. And we'll kind of just say, 打, which if my mother wants to say, 你打一个, that means you're going to see my power generation. Or 你打那个劲儿. So there's like many different type of ways we go about describing this power generation. We don't only refer to Fajin. So Fajin has no special meaning in the Chinese language. And the reason that it's probably in the West is most likely because the idea of Jin different to Li. Okay, so a lot of people, they believe that Jin is something magical, right? Like the Wu Tai Chi master that stands still and then they just like bounce people up and down. And say, that is Jin. It's like Qi that get into Jin. Whereas Li, they take inherently as some kind of muscular force. Well, that to some extent is sort of true, but in the Chinese traditional culture, we don't actually have that clear differentiation, right? We actually interchangeably use Jin and Li, and we use Li more often than Jin when we add Fa to it. We're issuing our force. We usually say Fa Li, and very solid we say Fa Jin. For example, if you look at the Yi Quan practice, in the syllabus, they call these things Fa Li, they don't call it Fa Jin. In my own lineage of whether it's Tai Chi or Wu Shi Tong Bei, we also tend to say Fa Li, Da Li, 出个劲儿. See, 出个劲儿 we use Jin, but Fa we usually attach it to Li. So while Li can also mean brutal force or physical strength, when we add Fa to it in Chinese martial art, it automatically refers to power generation, so you don't have to use Jin. Anyway, that's only the language side, but what about the actual action? It is also full of issues. The common problem with Western ideology of Fajin, as already pointed, that they think is something special and something divine. On top of that, they have a certain expectation. And this expectation probably largely came from the recent, well, not recent, when I say recent, I mean the past 2 decades, the rise of Chen style, with a very signature shaking kind of power generation. And so a lot of people then, in turn, think that is what Fajin is all about, and that's what makes Chinese martial art unique. While I do admit that in Chinese martial art, our way of generating power is sort of unique and different to modern combat sport in some areas. In some areas, it's actually the same mechanic, but we're still using human body, we have the same type of body mechanics. But in some areas, it does make a difference. It is kind of unique. But the appearance of it should not be all that different. The whole idea that you have to shake your body around to call it a Fajin, that is not correct. And obviously the idea that you have to kind of have some mental power that you don't move and the guy bounces up and down, that's Fajin, also not correct. The reality is, whether it's the Chinese internal martial arts type of power generation, which we call Fa Li more than Fajin, or the Western boxing or Muay Thai or MMA, we are all trying to generate power or force that hurt someone. And in doing so, it all have the same limitation and restriction. Firstly, our body is pretty much the same. I mean, your body, your skeletal structure, your anatomy is no different from another person. So you can only use your body in a fixed amount of ways. And secondly, if you try to generate power in a fight, then it's limited to one important constant, which is time. Okay? Imagine if I have come to a guy and I go, and how much punch he can throw to my face? Like it's bad. So the reason why this common idea of very powerful generation, or like you see shingy guys that goes, or like why is that bad? And or like something, even motions, they're like, why is that? Obviously I'm exaggerating, but if you've been around YouTube long enough, you definitely know what I'm talking about here. Why is it bad? Because you can't hit people. If that guy is semi-decent with throwing punches and is actually trying to hit you, you don't have the time to do that to somebody, right? So now just imagine, don't hit my face, but just throw punches when I start doing the Fajin, right? You see how much he can actually do while I'm trying to get off one punch. Which is why that whole ideology of you can have very powerful moves that kind of shakes and make a big effort and noise is a fallacy. Okay. So firstly, let's watch a short clip of Mike Tyson on a heavy bag. I don't think anyone dare to dispute that Mike Tyson has one of the hardest punches in boxing history. Has like one of the best knockout records in my personal favorite boxer. And let's have a look at what he does on the heavy bag. Alright, so from that video you can see, right, that obviously Tyson hit really, really hard. But notice his body. Does he have any power generation, precursing, winding up moves, or after effects that shocks? None, right? It's just regular punch. And do you see something special happening to the back other than just kind of swaying? No. But when you hit by Mike Tyson, you're probably gonna drop.
Now, he's allowing Mike Tyson to...
You see, the point is, delivering a force onto a person and hurting them is more about how much body mass you are generating behind that punch, and how efficient are you at transferring that force to the other guy. And that by efficiency, I mean how short of a contact period do you have on his body, right? The longer you stay on contact, the less pressure you're actually going to be able to create on his body, because power, the pressure equal to the amount of force over the amount of time you spend contacting that surface. And also furthermore, right, the quicker you can make the contact, the more chances of you actually succeeding in hitting someone. If you take too long, whether it's the winding up part, or the punching part, or the aftershakes, I like to call it, then you're not going to be able to hit someone. And here's a clip of Tyson just doing shadow boxing in the air without punching something. Okay, and now you can see that when he's doing shadow boxing, he's very, very casual. And by casual, I mean very light. He's not doing he's not doing that, right? He's just doing them quite fast. You can see the body mechanic behind. You can see how his body weight is going behind the punches, that he's punching very good. But you don't see that power generation. Why? Because you don't need to show that. Showing that doesn't help him in knocking out his opponent in the ring. Okay? When you're actually practicing these, you can only need to follow up the mechanics. And when he punches back, he does punch with power, but even then, you don't see any signs of obvious power generation. It's just regular punches with very, very good body mechanic. Now let's take another look at a video of a very good high-level Yiquan master, the Yao brothers, Yao Chengguang and Yao Chengrong, doing their punches, Yiquan punch, on a punching bag.
打目标啊，2、6，身体撞，后腿下在前蹬，啊，身体撞击前拳啊，3，瞬间猛然的发力啊。
So while these punches are not exactly like TriEssence, but you can kind of see one common thing is that they also don't overly wind up, don't shake their body, don't have an aftershake. They just kind of throwing punches regularly. To some people, untrained people, it might even look very light and inefficient. But let me guarantee you that if you actually meet them in person and get hit by them, it feels like getting hit by a hammer or a truck. It's a very devastating experience, right? It might look light, but it's not light at all. The reason why it looks light is because they are not on purposely trying to pretend they're generating a lot of power. They care more about whether or not they can hit somebody that is moving and not trying to be hit, rather than how impressive it looks on appearance. And that is the heart of the problem for the majority of the martial art community, whether it's in China or overseas, that people get caught up in the appearance of things. They want to see a powerful Fajin when doing a form or doing some kind of empty air practice, rather than think about can that move actually hit somebody for real, which is ultimately the big question. Right? There's a saying in boxing actually. The hardest punch is the one that actually connects. You can create 1 ton of force. If you can't hit somebody with it, it means absolutely 0. But of course, when you actually end up hitting somebody, then you need to worry about the body mechanics and how hard you can hit. But the point is, just because you can generate power, or you think you can, from a massive shake, it doesn't translate into a contact where you only have 1 split second to hit somebody. Unless you can cram all that power into that 1 single contact, it doesn't actually help you with fighting at all. And I can tell you from personal experience, majority of those people you see with impressive power generations that you see on shows, they can't translate that into a very efficient punch when they fight, which is why they can't fight. Which is why you don't see any of those power generation Fajin masters ever step in the ring and winning a fight with that kind of superior Fajin. And the reason you don't is because they can't, and at some point you should be smart enough to realize that there is a problem in this ideology, that it doesn't actually work. So this is not to say that you can't practice Fajin slow. It just means that you shouldn't be emphasizing on how impressive it looks. Of course, in the beginning, you can't just start doing punches like this and hope you have the right mechanics. That's in boxing, right? You don't just start out with the bag and start punching very fast. It doesn't work. You still have to learn from the proper mechanic. Do it slow, it's fun. But the difference is, you don't want to go to a bag or a pad and do something like this. Like that. That's not going to help you. No matter how hard you think you're hitting, it's not going to help. You kind of have to limit yourself in the correct timing and then try to find power in that. So, it may not be you don't do it efficiently, but you still have to know that you only have time to launch a punch like that, or launch a punch like that. And then from that limitation, then you think about how bit efficient can you throw that punch. So that ultimately, what counts is not that, okay? It's just throw a punch that's clean and fast and still have that power. And I mean, if you look at that punch, do you see any of the Fajin stuff that you expect from Chinese martial art? No, you don't. But that is a punch launched with using the Yiquan mechanic. Another example, right? Yiquan straight punch, which is the most unimpressive one. It looks like this one in the air. Do you see any power? You probably don't, right? I mean, a trained eye can see the body coordination, the way the joints are connected. But if you're untrained in Yiquan, you can't actually see what's going on. It looks very unimpressive. And of course, if I just throw it on a regular hand pad, it will look unimpressive too. It just look like this. Okay, but the one thing to notice is that firstly, it's very quick and fast and clean. I don't have any kind of delay. I can certainly throw this punch into someone without problem. If I walk up to a guy and I punch him, it will work. It's very efficient. I don't have to load up the punch. I don't have an aftershake to make it look impressive. But what it looks like is weak is because this punch is designed to penetrate body mass. It's not to punch the head, right? Instead, so let me take it out. If we keep it here, then you will notice that it dents into the person like that, right? And it feels uncomfortable, right? I mean, what does it feel like?
It's penetrating, goes inside.
So that's what the punch is useful. And you can see that when I'm doing this punch, did I load up? Did I have any impressive move? If I just do the punch in mid-air, you probably think I'm terrible at Fajin. But it's what effect counts, right? And I mean, obviously, I'm not making a comparison between myself and Tyson, because he's way leagues better. But it's the same idea, is that it doesn't have to look impressive mid-air. It just have to serve the result when you hit someone. That's what actually counts. And that's what real Chinese internal martial art should understand when it comes to Fajin. It's not about a cool thing. And that's why so many people train internal martial art and don't get anywhere, because they get absorbed and distracted by the appearance of cool power generation. I have so many people coming to me and say, that master is really good. You can see his Fajin is so powerful. If you can see somebody's Fajin is very powerful, he's not doing it properly, and he's going to be very sucking when it comes to a fight. You can almost tell that 100% of the time without a doubt. Like somebody that's very impressive power generation, he can't use that in a fight. And if he step into a fight with me, I'll kick his ass. That's as simple as this matter gets. Okay, so that's very important. And another thing, I mean, recently I came across a video, which you can see here.
Right, then, one more time.
So I have nothing against this person. He's only a student. He's misinformed, and he went to the wrong teacher. That's perfectly fine. So I have nothing against the student. He's the one that is the victim of the situation. But the problem here is he's claiming to do 削颠形意 or 削颠象形拳. I hear so many people saying, 削颠象形拳 is different to 形意, you can't judge it with 形意 and all of that nonsense. But I asked them, have any of you actually read actual text on 削颠? No. Why? Because they don't even speak Chinese. How can they know anything about 削颠 other than whatever the teacher fed them? And the teacher fed them something from one single biased sword as the teacher himself, which is designed to conserve and preserve his power in this matter. You see, I actually happen to have read multiple source texts about 削颠, one of which is written by a person who is now passed away, called Li Zhongxuan. And he is one of the few certified disciples, or rather students of 削颠. According to him, 削颠didn't take disciples, but he was one of 削颠students during the last phase of his life. So 削颠died relatively young, around the age of 50-something. He was shot by the government for being a cult member. But that's another story. So he was shot dead early, and in the last 10 years of his life before he was shot, this Li Zhongxuan was learning 削颠with 形意 and his 象形拳. And he's one of the most credible sources, and one could say first-hand source when it comes to description of 削颠, compared to some other self-appointed expert on 削颠martial art who can't even explain exactly where he got the style from. According to Li Zhongxuan's own book called 逝去的武林, okay, you can actually look up this book if you speak Chinese. In the book, he particularly says that 削颠 told him that any 形意 power that looks impressive is useless, and that the real secret is to 盘着劲练拳, 兜着劲打人. So what that translates is that 含 means to kind of withhold. You kind of have to hold the force when you practice. You don't practice exposing your power 100%. Okay, so if you don't understand that, then I don't do 削颠 style, but you can see the same description in 一拳. When you do a power projection, you do it like this. You don't do it like that's what 削颠said is wrong. Instead, you get the right mechanic and you withhold that force and you hold it in you. You don't completely send it out. And 兜着劲打人, 兜 in Chinese is like you scoop up something, kind of. It's almost like you take a piece of cloth and then you catch something. So that's so that action is called 兜. Don't have a precise English word for it. So 兜着劲, 兜 is like an action like this. It also kind of means to withhold or to kind of cover up and pull in. So 兜着劲打人 means that you don't want to launch an attack from here and then try to do it very powerful. You kind of want to move around, and when you touch him, then you generate that power, right? So again, 削颠 doesn't do 一拳, but all the internal martial art eventually reach a very similar conclusion. And from the way 一拳does its practice, you can kind of see the meaning that Xue Dian is trying to convey to Li Zhongxuan, according to Li Zhongxuan's book. And so, if you don't know what that means, is that if we're doing engagement in the Yiquan style, we're not going to come here and try to right? Instead, everything is kind of light, and then when we get here, then the punch comes there, and then there. But you see, it's very small and very contained, and only generate power when I touch it. It's not like generating from there. Another thing, we can further collaborate this with this very famous thing called 沾衣法力. Now this is a common understanding among internal martial arts, but predominantly it's emphasized in 五行通背. 沾衣法力 means you touch somebody's clothes and then you issue force. And notice here, it also says 沾衣法力, not 沾衣法劲, right? Because go first to my first point of how we actually prefer 法力 over 法劲 in the general martial art community. So 沾衣法力. What that means is that I don't launch a power from here, I launch my hand, and when I touch his clothes and know that he's not moving away, and he isn't neutralizing my strike, then that power comes out. Typically, you can also call it inch power, but inch power is more of a Wing Chun concept made famous by Bruce Lee. In the North, we don't actually use inch power, we call it 沾衣法力. Similar in usage, but not the same in mechanics, which is something we're not going to get into in this video. The point is, you can see from multiple sources how the idea is not to look impressive in power generation, but to conceal it and hit it right in the last moment. So you might think, okay, but what about if I train with power generation when I practice and I use to conceal when I hit somebody? Well, here's the thing. How you train is how you form the habit. How you form the habit is how you're going to end up using it. So if you train with the kind of fake impressive but pointless power generation, you're not going to be able to use it when you have to fight, which is again why so many of these impressive looking power generation Fajin masters never step in the ring and fight with somebody for real, because they can't. It just doesn't work that way. And then you might ask, okay, but what about this whole idea of Xini doing 明暗化, right? The visible force, the hidden force, and the Zou force. Yes, Xini does have these three stages, so does 五行通背 actually. But 明镜 doesn't mean you have to overemphasize on the Fajin's appearance. 明镜 just means that it's visible compared to 暗镜, okay? And if you look at people who I believe are skilled Xini practitioners, for example, such as Byron Jacob, you can see his 5 elemental first. But he isn't exaggerating his power, he isn't stomping his foot really hard, he isn't making a huge noise, he isn't stuffing his body and then doing that kind of thing. It's actually very, 明镜 just means you take your time to align your body and you try to find that connection with the body. With 暗镜, it just means like what Xue Dian described, it looks hidden, you kind of just come out casually and when you touch the guy, then the power comes through. So 明镜 doesn't give anyone the right to over-exaggerate the appearance of Fajin. And on the same note, in 五行通背, we have something similar, which although 五行通背is a bit different, because we have, due to the origin, which is Qi family 通背, we have big motions, right? Which is not exactly the topic we talk about today, but just as a side note, right? In the beginning, for us, 明镜 is we do a huge P like that. That's 明镜, right? But it's not like that, right? So even though it's 明镜, we don't exaggerate it. We just simply lift our arm and we drop it. We lift our arm and we drop it. That's all. So what is 暗镜? 暗镜 just makes the movement smaller. So instead of going from there to there, we go from here to here. Right? So that's 暗镜. So even 明镜 doesn't make it overly impressive or exaggerated, right? If you see my master doing his P, it looks very casual. And honestly, when I first saw the video, I wasn't impressed either. But when you actually get hit by that P on your arm, it's very devastating, my personal experience. The point is, the power shouldn't look impressive, it needs to feel impressive. And in the same way, although it doesn't translate as well as this power shaking, but if I do a P like this, it also doesn't look like much. It doesn't look like I'm doing like that, or it's not like that. However, if I ask Jackson here to just give me his arm, and gonna do tears, but it just doesn't hurt so much. Instead of looking impressive, but not having the effect, I just simply put my arm here and do that. You see, it doesn't have to look impressive. It just have to feel cool. Oh well, no cool, but it has to feel efficient. Same with our 中拳, right? I've had some people in the past criticizing my 中拳, saying that it looks really bad. It looks bad because you are looking for that. But my master doesn't want that, and therefore I don't do that, right? For us, 中拳, while that in the beginning we do train with some resemblance to power generation on the Western ideology, where we kind of do that, and we make a noise. The noise is actually only there to synchronize the internal relaxation versus the body. But the point is, we're not trying to make it look better in terms of appearance. We're trying to actually concise the move to make it look as economical and efficient and short as possible. And ultimately, when we hit somebody, we are just literally taking a casual step, and then there. It's a very concealed punch. The more you move your body, the less concealed it can be. And that goes opposite goal to what we're actually trying to want. We want to shorten the motion, shorten the preparation, shorten the aftershock to one single shake. My master always tell me, eventually your aim is to walk up to a guy, shiver just like you went out into the cold from a warm room, and then he's already sitting on the ground. The time it takes to just do that one shiver is all it takes to hit someone. And if you follow that guideline, you can understand why we look down on people who have a very impressive power generation. Because that's way too slow. The time someone is trying to do that, I can dance around him with spinning circle ballerina. All I want is to have the guy standing up, don't move, right? I'm going to catch a walk, and that's the punch. But the hard thing is obviously, during that moment, I have to compound all my body criteria into the proper punch. This video isn't about 中拳 or mid punch, but just to give you an example of what real practical internal martial art is actually looking for. They're not looking for impressive Fajin. They're looking for the result of a correct body mechanic concise into a very short motion, as short as possible. So, it is a fallacy to judge people's martial art based on how impressive their power generation appears to be. So you might ask, how do I judge people? Or why I comment on internet all the time, this guy's good, that guy's bad. You see, since I don't judge them by how impressive their function is, I judge them by how economical their motion is. And of course, if you understand the internal mechanics, I can start to see if the shoulder is overly tensed, is the force stuck here and not going onto the hand, is the timing of the body rotation and the hand not together. Because sometimes, a person might appear like he's using his body, but his timing is wrong. It might even look like the timing is right, but the connection is wrong, and then the power doesn't come from the body to the arm. And if you wonder how I actually can tell that, the day you can do it yourself and understand how you do it, you can see it in other people. So unfortunately, if you not reached that point yet, you literally can't tell. Which is why there's so many flaws in Chinese martial arts, and so many people are buying into it, because they can't tell good from bad, and they're not willing to step up and put on a glove and fight them to see if they're good at fighting. If all fail, that's always a good test, is to fight the teacher you're trying to learn from, and then see if they can actually beat your ass efficiently, right? Not with a struggle, but completely pulling your ass, and then maybe there's something that you can learn from them. Of course, this is not always accurate. It's still limited to how efficient you are when it comes to regular sparring. So if you're completely bad, then then maybe he can beat you, doesn't mean he's good. But reality is a lot of these so-called masters who can't even beat an untrained student. But nobody finds out because nobody actually goes and try. And that's actually very important. I'm not saying you should always go and challenge everyone you want to learn martial art from, but it is a healthy alternative that you can use to vet the person you're about to learn from. And personally, when I'm teaching martial art, I never mind when a new guy comes and says you want to try sparring to see if you want to learn from me. That's perfectly fine. For me, that is not disrespectful or offensive. It's normal. You kind of have to know what you're buying before you buy it. Just like when I bought my ring light, I asked the guy, can I put it on and see how bright it is? I can't buy it out of faith or out of trust of that person. That is very stupid. That's how it gets scammed. Alright, so let's just revise everything. Basically, don't look at the appearance of Fajin. If you can't see the internal mechanic and the connection, then just give up on trying to tell who's good and who is not until you find a legitimate teacher that can kick your ass, and when you ask him to do a very casual light punch on you, you can feel the devastation and the heaviness, right? I mean, it doesn't work if the guy is actually stand still and he's like, no. That doesn't help. It had to look very casual. When my Yiquan teacher first hit me, it was so casual, I couldn't understand it. He first hit me here, I felt like a hammer knocked here, my whole head went dazed, heard a huge noise in my ear, and I was incoherent for about a minute or so. I was like out of myself. And when I saw him doing the same punch to another person, it looked so casual. He just walked up to the guy and just did that. It's not like he did that, no. It was super casual. That's when I realized, wow, how I felt it and how it actually looked from a third person perspective is completely different. He literally walked up to a guy and just did that. He's not like that. So if you can find a person like that, then he's worth learning from. Don't trust massive shaking, impressive power generations that takes 5 minutes to charge and then 5 minutes to recover. Those are terrible. If you are trying to do legitimate Chinese martial art, right? If you wanna look impressive in a demonstration, wearing kung fu pajamas, looking cool among your friends, really doesn't matter. But you wanna learn something that's efficient and practical, then those are the things to avoid. Alright, that's it for today. Hope the video has made sense to you. If it does, please subscribe on my YouTube channel. If you can support me on Patreon, that would be greatly appreciated. As always, a shout out to all my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much for supporting me throughout the pandemic. Whenever you have any questions on current content, suggestions for future content, always feel free to let me know. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And even if I don't know about what you're asking, I'll make sure to find out for you. I do have extensive connection in the Chinese martial art community in China. And when words is not enough, I'll make videos, Patreon exclusive, to further explain your queries. Lastly, I'd like to remind everyone that we're in a pandemic, so wear your mask, sanitize your hand, social distance, stay safe and stay healthy, so that you can live to train another day. Thanks for watching TriEssence martial art channel. Keep safe and keep healthy, and I'll see you next time.